Welcome to Conversations with Sarah. Today, I'm joined by Helen Pinnock, who is a wellness business coach, to have a conversation about her experience of polycystic ovary syndrome. Welcome, Helen.
Hi, lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me. So this is a topic that I don't really know anything about. So thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us today. I don't know, would you be happy sort of explaining what polycystic ovary syndrome is?
Absolutely. It's basically, it's one of those weird sort of things that actually so many different women experience it so differently. But it's a systemic thing. It can affect all areas of the body, but it's predominantly caused by hormonal imbalance. So I first started having experiences with it around where I hit puberty, basically.
Okay.
And sort of like missing, menstrual cycles just went completely out the window, really, in terms of I could go 3 or 4 months and then not bleed for 3 or 4 months, just all sorts of horrendous things. And, I think like sort of putting on weight without really realizing it, as to why that was happening. And so it really sort of hit me personally. It's been a huge journey. I mean, obviously not 14 anymore. And I'm getting towards, I'm nearly 50. But I think, when it was really predominantly for me was when I was wanting to conceive. And, I spent 10 years back in the day, I don't think it's much better now. Back in the day, the way of dealing with this was it's a woman's problem. So we'll put her on the pill, and at 40, and to leave you on the pill for 10 years. And then funny enough, when you come off the pill, it just comes straight back. So that was really, I sort of wouldn't want to go into too many details of how it affects lots, because it really does affect women, but differently, but it sort of comes with endometriosis, that kind of, that's not my experience of it, but all those sorts of things. Yeah. So it's really, and then when I wanted to try and get pregnant, that's when it really hit me. And that's kind of how my journey to what I do now and everything began, around sort of fertility and wellness and taking back control, if you like. So
and I think I remember being a young woman and sort of period starting, and for me it was very much mood swingy, painful, extreme pain, and the same thing, I was put on the pill. Go on the pill, that'll sort it all out. So I guess what made you, where did you recognize that it was different for you, in that it wasn't just ordinarily becoming a woman, so to speak, and all the great things that we go through at puberty?
Well, it was, like you say, the mood swings and the pain, but we're not talking sort of, what you've called, sort of normal pain. That it was extreme pain to the point where I was like literally lying on the floor in agony and couldn't move, and blood loss when it did occur. I was like literally losing so much that I would faint. So it was real big extremes, but it was very much treated as though, it's a woman's problem and she'll grow out of it, and all those kind of things. And I think it's just that thing of knowing that something is not right, even though somebody else is telling you, it's just part of being a woman. Just internally, if you really listen, kind of going, this is being a woman, this is not great.
Did it take long for you to actually get a diagnosis and for a doctor to recognize that it was more?
Well, I think I was sort of, it was a weird one, really. I'd say I got a diagnosis very early on, which was unusual. But then even now, they still don't have a definition of it. It's kind of, you had to have the polycystic things on your ovaries. And of course, actually, traditionally it would be women who were very overweight and, really quite kind of really struggling with lots of ways. And that wasn't me. I was always that sort of woman who would put on, or girl, I put on probably more weight than for what I was eating. But I wasn't that really, 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 really big, and which they would see as traditional. So it was quite unusual, I think, to get a diagnosis. Cannot honestly say though that it helped really. Having that, it kind of, because it was such an unknown thing, and it was before the internet really, and it was quite, we rely on that so much that we got to Google. But,
I've Googled before I've come on to speak with you, just to kind of look at stats, because it was something that I was interested to know.
And it affects so many women, but unfortunately I think it's a bit like a lot of women's health issues are not treated properly, are they? You know, and it's really...
no, and I think that very much it is another podcast that I need to have, because that's something as a woman that I've experienced, and the women that I'm speaking with, it's an underlying thing that's coming across, definitely.
Yeah, totally. And I think when it comes to things like hormones and stuff like that, and I'm seeing it also as a woman who's coming towards menopause as well. It's something, obviously there are huge issues going on there, hormonally and stuff like that, but it's something that's being treated as though it's something wrong with us. Yeah. Not that actually it's, if we weren't experiencing all these extreme symptoms, it is just should be a natural part of life.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, I could go on about this for quite some time. So I think that in terms, you know, there's a lot of artificial hormones and stuff that are in the environment, and the way that we eat and all of those things, which make women are much more sensitive to generally than men, which is why there's so many hormones in the water or plastic that's around, which it doesn't really, and all the emotional things, if we experience trauma or anything in our life, that can then trick, you know, things can get clicked off there. So it's a lot, and that's why so many different women experience so frequently, but experience it so differently. It does make it difficult for them to work with.
Absolutely. And going back to the stats, what I read this morning was it's 1 in 10 women they say that are diagnosed. So 1 in 10 women are diagnosed. I know from my own health stuff that not everything gets diagnosed. So it's 1 in 10 women diagnosed, and there's no cure. It is just a case of managing the symptoms as they come along, and it was more than I expected as well, because it sort of said about there being links to diabetes and other conditions. So the question that I wonder is, what has helped you in your experience manage your symptoms? And I recognize that won't be for everybody, but what's helped you?
I think there's lots of different things, and it's certainly how I got into the world of wellness that I've spent the last 20 years in. So I basically, the thing that initially began to help me was very much diet. And back in, I mean, this is not what I was suggesting people should do. They should go and consult with a nutritional therapist. Is that I was just sort of experimenting with it, because I was reading a few things, and it was kind of a case of cut out all carbohydrates. And actually, because like you mentioned the diabetes, I was very much on the line of there's something called Syndrome X, which is very much on the line of becoming borderline diabetic. And I used to crave like bread and potatoes and sugar and all of those things hugely. To, you know, like, it wasn't just sort of like, it was really like, I've got to have it, otherwise it's really bad.
And that can often be symptomatic of hormonal imbalance in the body, can't it? And it's something, it's something that's a running theme between a lot of the conversations that I'm having, actually.
Absolutely. And I think at the time, when I was getting into this, I didn't realize actually it was really showing me what nutrients I wasn't getting in my body. So I was vegetarian, I think, at the time, but I was a bad vegetarian. You know, it was really bad, not like I am these days, but it was that. And then also I was just really desperate to get pregnant at this point, and I was like, so like everything, I would just have done anything, you know, I could completely do anything at all. So we were living in Carnforth in Lancaster at the time, and I happened to walk into I guess it was at the doctor's or the dentist or something, you know, those sort of like magazines you have there, like Heat, or it wasn't Heat,
yeah, you know, your women's magazines.
Yeah, women's magazine.
And, quote.
Yeah, air quotes, yeah. And it was kind of, I looked down, I was scrolling through, and I'm sure it was Victoria Beckham at the time, and she said that she'd got this PCOS, and how she dealt with it was with homeopathy and nutrition. So I was like, oh, you know, like I said, I was completely desperate. So I booked an appointment with a homeopath, and I kid you not, I knew nothing about this, any of this at the point. And I was just like, basically, just get me pregnant, I don't care what you're going to do. So I kind of rocked up to the appointment. It was freezing cold. It was above a chemist. The electricity wasn't on. It was, you know, it was like, what am I doing?
Yeah. Not a great first impression.
And it didn't get much better. I mean, looking back, she was probably new to the job, but she kind of just started asking me all these random questions, or what felt random, from somebody who was used to only conventional medicine, to be asked all these weird questions. Like, you're not telling me anything, you're not telling me. And I'm thinking, what does she want to know? Oh, that's really weird. What am I doing? Yeah. But they put, something inside me, even though this really bad impression was created, kept going, this is going to be a good thing. And so I followed her advice. I took the thing, the sort of little tablets. So that's where it kind of, and then actually I kind of, something in it clicked with me. It's like, this is right for me. I can start taking control of my own health. So I started really like going to the library at the time, like I said before, Google, and looking up all sorts of things around it. And there was a few books written about PCOS, many American books at the time, but just generally about natural health and well-being and taking control of my own health. So I began to look into it, and it was all really about trying to do things as naturally as possible, really. So I think that was really the starting point. And I did actually get on, my kids are like 21 and 18, so obviously got pregnant, but I did get pregnant with a combination of the homeopathy and nutrition. And yeah, it kind of just started from there, really. And it's kind of been, I guess, throughout all my life, every time I've hit a different sort of stage hormonally, it's been like having to do a slight adjustment. Maybe that's putting in yoga in there, or, watching the stress levels or anything. So I just have to be really, really aware of my own body.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with managing any kind of, especially chronic long-term illness. It's really tapping into and listening to your body and what it's needing, and recognizing, like you said, the food cravings that you were having. It's being kind of mindful about that, isn't it? And kind of just taking pause and sort of going, okay, what is it that I actually need? Because if I'm craving all of these things, what's really going on? Because most of the time it is your body trying to let you know that it needs a nutrient, or you're not looking after yourself exactly in the way that your body needs it to do. Like you said, stress is one of the biggest things in society at the moment.
Absolutely. It's not going to go anywhere, I don't think, anytime soon, is it? So I think we all know that we all should listen to our bodies more, but I think, like you said, whether it's PCOS or any chronic condition, it's really about having to work really hard to really listen. And I'm a big lover. I love nothing more than researching anything, and finding out something new, and just, how does this connect with this? And maybe looking at people's other experiences around you. It's so much easier, isn't it, these days, to really investigate other people's experiences of, something like PCOS or anything like that.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I'm personally really enjoying about the podcast, is being able to connect with all these people and hearing all these different experiences, and really seeing threads that fit along my hypothesis of how I manage my own health as well, and sort of recognizing that it's not just me that thinks this. There's all these other people as well that are thinking these similar thoughts, and perhaps we've kind of got the right idea. Perhaps there is more. I say, the conventional medicine, the NHS, the things that we have, we are really, really lucky that we have those things, but they only go so far. And then these complementary therapies they're not new, that people think. A lot of them, they go back to pre-medicine as we know it now. And so being able to know that there's this one thing that can help here, and there's this one thing that can help here, and really educating yourself and being able to find the best things that work for you is just amazing. And I love that I'm being able to learn a lot, even though this is a field that I work in. It's been amazing.
I think you just don't stop learning, do you? I personally don't think that.
No, absolutely love it. So what would your advice be then for someone who suspects they've got polycystic ovary syndrome, what PCOS, where would you say to start?
Well, I think it's really, like you said, it's not about one thing or the other. I've worked in the field of complementary therapy for well over 20 years. And I'm not saying for a second that you shouldn't use, with just air quotes again, conventional medicine. But I know from my personal experience, because as soon as I got to the point of not having any cysts on my ovaries anymore, because I managed it to the point where I got rid of that happening, and that improved things hugely, it was then denied that it was ever an issue. It's like, hang on a minute, you were telling me 1 minute that it was forever, and now you're telling me the reality.
Weirdly, I've had a similar experience with one of my diagnoses. Moved doctor, and suddenly it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, okay. So the reality is you can have PCOS without the actual cysts. Absolutely. It's called the PCOS syndrome. And personally, I think it's really difficult for me to say, yes, go and do this way of things, because I always found, even today, getting involved too much in the sort of, with a lot of doctors, is not all doctors by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly like in the NHS, when you get higher up, it's very much still not spoken about very well, and it can really knock your confidence. It can really knock your belief in yourself. So I think it's really a case of definitely do your research. You know, I know sometimes it can be a case of we don't think we should be doing too much with Dr. Google, but I think in this case, personally, I think there is a lot that you can do. Go and consult your doctor, use the NHS, but know that there are other things that you can look at. Not for a second would I recommend somebody doing something that would be that they shouldn't be doing. So always use somebody who is reputable. But there's plenty of reputable nutritional therapists. Reflexology is fantastic for helping to balance hormones. This is not about saying, yes, that's going to get rid of something. It's about really bringing the body back into some sort of balance. And really, that's, the thing that's going to help you the most, whatever it is, whether it's reflexology, whether it's acupuncture, mindfulness, a combination of all three. I think there's really a case of you have to try a few out and see what works for you. But whatever it is, don't give up. I think that's the most, it can be so easy when you're in the midst of all of this and feeling pretty rubbish, to kind of go, right, okay, I just give up and it's not worth it. And, it is a lot, I don't have all the answers, but there are definitely answers out there that you can make yourself feel better with trial and error, and definitely improving your diet, even if it, like I say, when I first started, I was like cutting out carbohydrates because I hadn't got a clue what I was doing. Now obviously there are a lot better ways of eating, a lot healthier, and it's probably, talking with a good nutritional therapist, it's probably more about adding stuff in rather than taking stuff out.
And I would agree with you.
Eating more, the more things with higher nutrient level than actually sort of just filling up on bread and carbs and stuff, and the simple sugars, which obviously we know is not good for us, but particularly for women. And I think it's about living a more natural life, but without stressing about it, because if you're not careful, you can end up in that, right, and I can only ever eat organic, and I can only ever go, breathe clean air. Well, the reality is, who can afford to do all that? Who can afford the time to do all that? And also, really, you're not going to be able to keep everything out because of the way our world is. So you're going to create more stress.
And it becomes restrictive then, doesn't it? And it's almost like you're punishing your body for something that, rather than nurturing your body, you're punishing yourself for something.
Yeah, do you know what? I think that's spot on what you said, actually. It's about nurture, isn't it? And the thing is, I think the only thing is really kind of listen to yourself and go, is that what is really true for me, or what I would like to be true for me? I think it's a case of like, do I really want that, or is that something that, it's just that real mindfulness, I guess, isn't it?
And I think it's for me, like the biggest thing, if you know your body, and it's trust in yourself, and like you've said, find out everything that you can to go and advocate for yourself with a doctor. I know I had a lipoma on my shoulder years and years ago, so a visible lump on my shoulder. I saw 4 doctors before a doctor actually looked at the lipoma, and because I was in pain and it was moving pain, there's like stuff going on, but there was this lipoma, and they kept trying to tell me I was depressed. And it's like, no, I haven't manifested this lump. This lump is real, it exists. When a doctor finally looked at it, I was sent to private surgery to have it removed because it was such a big thing. So it's like, trust in your body. You know what is going on for you. Like for me, I would say keep symptom diaries. If any condition, keep symptom diaries, kind of know what is going on for you and present that information in, unfortunately, as an unemotional way as possible as you can, because then that way you are more likely to be listened to. And if the first one doesn't listen to you, keep going. As demoralizing as it can feel, keep going.
Absolutely. And I think that's super important because, but I think it's also important to, like you said, really educate yourself and know what you want the outcome to be. Because when it comes to things like PCOS, there isn't really a huge, you know, they can put you on some, you know, some medication and stuff like that. And that might help to a degree, but potentially it could end up being worse with it. So I think it's always a case of actually, you know, can I improve my health naturally without ignoring what they're telling me? But it's like, what do I want this outcome to be?
Yeah.
Because actually there is so much, if, you know, I'm really into my health and living naturally, but there's always something else that I can do that makes it a little bit better. Or, there's all times when we all get a bit fed up and we eat too much of the not, I say junk food, it's degrees of junk food, isn't it? But we don't all eat as mindfully as we want. We perhaps, miss that yoga class, and maybe actually we could get back onto it a little bit more and, really help ourselves. Because actually when it comes to PCOS, there is actually an awful lot you can do to help yourself. But it's finding, I think the biggest thing is finding the support. That's the one thing I didn't have, was the support of other people. And there's lots and lots of groups online, now. I don't have any particular in mind, but there are lots and lots of groups of supportive people who, will help you really and get
and I think with these groups as well, it's really important, I think, finding the right group for you as well, because like you say, there's loads and loads of different types of groups out there. So echoing back to what you said, it's like what do you want from what you're doing? Will also encourage, will also make you think about what space that you're in as well, because there can be some supportive but quite negative spaces, so it can bring you down. I've been in them because of my own health stuff, and then there's other places where it can be more uplifting, where you can still talk about your symptoms and the struggles that you're having, but it can be more uplifting. So I think it's something to be mindful as well, that when you go into these spaces, find spaces that are going to help you along your journey to your wellness, as opposed to keep you stuck in the space of I don't know how to put it. Stuck in that space.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right, because like I said, I know for me personally, this is very much for me personally, there was a time when I was going down the much more conventional route. In particular, I started down the, when we were trying to get pregnant, down that route, and actually it became a very negative space, and it became a very negative spiral, and I got very stuck in that place. So I think, like you just said perfectly, really, it's about actually, is this going to get me where I want? I can still be open and honest, but it is a positive space. It's where, without being artificially positive. And,
not the toxic positivity where like everything's okay, but that kind of more of like, this is my reality, and it's okay that this is my reality, and this is what I'm trying to find information about. Who knows something? That I guess, but that's me. That's the space I need to be in. That might not be where somebody else is in their journey. I think at the beginning, you dip in and out of different spaces, don't you? And you find what you need. I think it's just one of those things that I think, be mindful that, or for me, I wanted to be mindful whilst I do now share my journey. It comes from a place of trying to be helpful to other people, as opposed to, I don't want my health conditions to be my identity. They are a part of my journey and something that I'm working with healing, and I share the information to offer hope to other people that are going through similar experiences. So I think it's just sort of, there's that balance, isn't it? Because when you're newly diagnosed, it can there's almost a grieving process that you go through. For me, there can be relief, because actually somebody is now recognizing that the things that I was talking about weren't made up, and it is real. And for me, with my diagnosis, my conditions, I was very much told, this is what you've got, get on with it, it's not going to get any better. And that's really hard to hear, and for me, I wasn't okay with that, and I have worked very, very hard to get more well.
Absolutely. Well, and the same for me as well. I think it's quite interesting when you're talking about stories. I completely agree with what you were saying. I was working with one of my clients this morning about how much we all generally, if we work in the field of wellness, whatever that is, we generally all got some sort of story. Well, everybody's got a story, but there is some sort of story. But there is definitely a time when it's the cathartic to write it all down, and there's a time when that then moves into how am I going to share this to inspire and help other people. And I think one of the things that I always recommend to my clients is write everything down for yourself, write your whole story, don't filter it, just write the whole thing. And that's almost that get it out of your head, that catharticness that we're talking about, the grieving process.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to actually, okay, I'm ready to talk about bits of this to inspire people, to rewrite it, take out the bits that, as I say, should always be kept with a therapist or your friends and family.
Yeah.
Because, it's not right that we share everybody shares everything. I'm really, really honest with everything I do in my work. But there are bits that I'm never going to share, and actually,
I do know, because it's not particularly useful for anyone else.
absolutely, and it's like actually, when you're I think it's really, really important when you're sharing your story with other people that it's a case of what's my reasoning for sharing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference, isn't it? There are times when it's really helpful just to write it all down, even to put it on Facebook or whatever, if we want to share it with our friends as a process for ourselves. But that's completely different from when you're sharing it into a place of actually wanting to inspire other people, I think.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, my story, a lot of people in my real life, unless they listen to my podcast, won't actually be aware of some of the stuff that I've gone through with my health, because it isn't something that I've really shared in my real life. So I find that really interesting, that I'm quite happy to be like, hey, this is going to be helpful to other people. Yes. Here it is. This is what's going on. So, and I think that's, I value that you've come on and shared a bit of what you've experienced as well, and hopefully somebody's listening to this today that's going through similar to you will be able to be like, oh, okay, this might help. So thank you for coming on and sharing with me today.
Very, very welcome.
If it feels okay, this feels like a good place to kind of bring it to a close. Is there anything that you would like to leave people listening with? Is there anything that we haven't said?
I think it's, still what we've said really, but I think there really is a case of, just don't give up. There is always, it's not necessarily about curing something or fixing something, but I think there's always a space to improve things. And, like you say, advocating for yourself and really educating yourself on particularly the ways that you can look after your body naturally. There's so many, obviously I'm a wellness business coach, there's so many holistic therapists, and that's why I know so many holistic therapists and yoga teachers who are so educated in all of these things, and can really do a lot to help and support you, and as you said, nurture you, which I think is so important as well.
Yeah, and I don't think I can add anything else to that. You've wrapped it up perfectly, so thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you to everyone that's been listening. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. To connect, find out about me and my guest, visit srtt.co.uk or follow at SRTT Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. I'll be back next Wednesday with a new guest. And until then, stay curious and be kind to yourself.